Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready for more propaganda? Well, you're in the wrong place at the right time. Colombo Chronicles is for critical thinkers. Let's welcome the consumer advocate for justice. Here's the Rose Colombo.
Hi, everyone. It's the Rose Colombo, right here for you. Hello, America, and hello, world. Happy Hump Day. It's Wednesday. You're almost there to TGIF. Thank God it's Friday for those who don't work the weekend. I'm here for you every Wednesday, so you know that you are never alone. I am the Rose Colombo, the legendary advocate for justice. Some call me the crusader for justice in the media. I've been a warrior for justice, actually, all my life, even as a kid. I think many of you are. You remember ever being aware of the underdogs in school? And although myself, I was shy, I don't know about you, but I spoke up for them and couldn't help myself. I tried to compliment them, and it didn't cost me any money or just a smile or a hello or a kind word or act. And I think that's what we need today in today's world. Today we have a world of bullies on all levels, from family members in some cases to friends, to spouses, to professionals, politicians, some law enforcers, students, teachers. It can be almost anyone, not everyone, but it can be anyone who affects us in a negative way. Fortunately, we have most good people in the world, good citizens who provide a helping hand to those in need. And we reap what we sow. And karma or God's judgment or the universe's judgment, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe will always come back and hit us either with a painful slap in the face to wake us up, with bad behaviors that we may have not apologized for or made, apologies to those persons that we may have hurt. Also, if you reaped and so on, if you've sown good behaviors in the past and done some good deeds, then that will also sometimes unexpectedly, and a lot of times actually, reward you, and you will be surprised at some type of blessing or abundance that will be given back to you. Unexpectedly, usually. Some people call it miracles. So today we are going to talk about the good, the bad, and the evil, because these three words cause a nation to be on a vibrational level of good or a lower vibrational frequency of bad, and even the lowest vibration of frequency, which is evil, depending on the thoughts emanating from the minds of 7 billion people around the world, good or bad, or the thoughts of a nation, such as in America, where we have 339 million legal American thoughts spreading across the nation as an unseen network. It bonds us together of either like-mindedness, or it can divide us into conflicts. And then there's the lowest vibrational that divides us into lawlessness. And this increases crime, lack of morals, disrespect for the law, disrespect for humanity, disrespect for motherhood, disrespect for fatherhood, disrespect for our neighbors, and so forth. It spreads like we are our thoughts. And so it causes increased crime and lack of morals when we are not on a higher vibration of morality, traditions, and following the laws of the land especially in America, the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the sovereignty of this great republic and this nation that was founded as a Judeo-Christian nation. Not that anyone has to be a Jew or a Christian, but our nation is a Judeo-Christian nation, and that's why we're on a solid foundation, because we do believe most legal Americans and natural-born Americans that God is the higher power and that he has blessed our land, and our laws and our Constitution have been rooted from the Bible and the Ten Commandments. And all laws in the United States are rooted from the Bible and the Ten Commandments. And that's why no enemy can come against America, destroy our spirituality and our foundation rooted from the Bible and the Ten Commandments, because those Ten Commandments were written in stone with God's finger. There are consequences for violating those laws. So, on that note, I'm going to take a break, and we're going to enter into the Justice Club on Colombo Chronicles today. And we have a very special repeat guest that I always welcome, and his name is Bill Bays. Like, hey, it's with a B, like boy, Bill Bays. And he is fabulous, and he's a prominent businessman, and he's, I'm going to tell you a little more about him when I come back from this important message. So don't touch that dial, because I want you to stay with the Rose, and you will find out, and you'll be able to empower and enlighten yourself and maybe do more research. When I ask him this question, was the federal government 71? And what are the consequences if it was from 1871 to the present? You will want to know the answer to that and why we are where we are at today in America. That affects the entire world. And by the way, so does this book affect the entire world. Critics say it is masterfully crafted, and not only that, the Rose says it is not only a book, it is a message for mankind.
Obamasaurus, the new book by Rose M. Colombo, is an updated version of a political satire that reflects the political roadmap of today's world, written with an Orwellian twist. Will humanity survive or suffer depopulation or extinction? Obamasaurus by Rose M. Colombo, available at Amazon.com.
Howdy, folks. Just stopped in by my favorite restaurant, the Horseshoe Cafe. I highly recommend the home-cooked hot meals and piping hot coffee. In fact, it reminds me of my mom's home cooking when I was growing up. The customer service is excellent. Be sure to save room for the world's best desserts. Make sure you try a slice of fresh homemade pie. The Horseshoe Cafe is located at 154 East 4th Street in the heart of Benson, Arizona. The Horseshoe Cafe is right outside of Tombstone, Sierra Vista, and Tucson. Sometimes Patty and Mike stop by to welcome you. The staff at the Horseshoe Cafe looks forward to seeing you. Stop by to eat or relax. Cool down in the desert with a cold beer or your favorite cocktail. That's the Horseshoe Cafe. Oh, and don't tell anyone I told you, but some people think it's haunted. One thing is for sure. Be sure to bring your appetite.
The Justice Club is back on Colombo Chronicles Live Podcast. Join Rose Colombo at noon and find out what tips she will provide in a world of little justice.
Colombo Chronicles Live. Colombo is on their trail. Listen up at Colombo Chronicles Live.
Hi, everyone. We're back on Colombo Chronicles Live, and we're going to enter into the Justice Club. And because there's very little justice in the world, maybe not for some of you, but for many of us, we have witnessed the injustices and legal abuses. And that's why I wrote the first book, Fight Back Legal Abuse, in 2010. It went viral around the world because there is very little justice in the world. And part 2 will be coming out soon. I'll let you know when Fight Back Legal Abuse 2 comes out for the public. And now we're going to enter into the world of justice. And our very special returning guest is Bill Bays. Bill Bays is not just another school teacher. Bill Bays is a longtime person who is not only a successful businessman, but he has also taught high school, and including being a band director, and he has been studying and researching our individual rights and also the Constitution and the state and federal government, and he has firsthand knowledge of the corruption in government and the court system. So his research and his education on the Constitution is a wealth of information that you will not want to miss. He's now single, for all you ladies out there, and he has 2 adult daughters and 4 grandchildren. So let's welcome our very special guest to Colombo Chronicles on the Justice Club today, Bill Bays. And let's just say hello. Hi, Bill. How are you doing today?
Rose, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. We have some thunder and some rain here, but that's okay because that's just God waking us up, right?
Absolutely. Got rain where I'm at also.
Oh, good. Yeah, clears the air. So, Bill Bays, I was telling our audience a little bit about your background. If you want to share anything else, that's fine. And also, Bill, I am very concerned, obviously, about what's happening in our country for a long time now, and been researching myself and following the events of the day for a long time. And it's very concerning, not just to myself, but to the audience, I'm sure, especially in America and people around the world who depend on America in keeping us stable and prosperous so we can help other countries. But there's something happening, and I don't know if you heard the beginning of the show, but I was explaining their vibrational levels, and it seems like we went down to the lowest level, and now we need to work our way up. So I want to ask you this important question. Can you tell us, was the federal government taken over in 1871? But I wanted to start with the Civil War and ask you, was the Civil War about slavery?
Okay. The Civil War, as we have found out that all wars are planned. They don't just happen by mistake. It's politics at its highest level, and there is a purpose for every war. Usually that has to do with changes in different governments around the world, or replacing different politicians with other politicians, or affecting the economy, or affecting families in countries. So there's many reasons for war. But the Civil War, I firmly believed, was not about slavery. I believe it was about states' rights and taking those states' rights and individual rights away from every American and changing our country into a country controlled by a strong central government, which was not the intent of the founders. Our founding fathers had fought against England. They fought against King George and the British Parliament. They wanted freedom. Basically, we had that freedom once we won our freedom. 1781, the war ended. 1783, the Treaty of Paris. But England never wanted to let go of us. They wanted to control us. If not on the surface, definitely underneath, through political control. And I believe that the Civil War was perpetrated to destroy America, As we know, over 700,000 soldiers on both sides were killed in that war, and many, many more wounded and, legs cut off and just decimated, and their families decimated as well. So in 1865, at the end of the war, the families that were left, many of them fatherless, wanted nothing more to do with war, but also were in a position that government could then control them. And I believe, again, it was all perpetrated. They moved forward from 1868 to 1871 with basically usurping the federal government. I believe it happened, it was finalized in 1871, and I believe it's the same federal government today. They formed a British corporation under the control of the British Crown, and I believe that still exists today. There's a lot of debate both ways on that, but I believe that the Congress in Washington answers directly to that corporation. Whoever becomes president is president of that corporation. And I also believe that every one of the state governments were usurped as well and put under that federal corporation, under the Crown of England. When the country was founded, it was 13 individual states, separate governments, separate sovereign governments, and a few years later, after the country was formed, they created a central government, basically in 1789, and George Washington was the first president under that central government. But the states were in charge. The states were in control, and ultimately the people were in control and in charge. Basically the buck stopped with the people. But since 1871, it has totally flipped around, and the federal government now controls the state governments, and it's evident through what goes on a daily basis to anyone that is really paying attention. But the purpose was...
And I'm sorry, but that is a serious problem for me to agree with, how the federal government has taken over the states' rights and how we no longer rule our own states, because there are so many levels of people who are now not only being mandated and ruled and dictated to about their freedom of speech, about their freedom of religion, about insulting a foreign religion. If you are accused of insulting them on U.S. soil, even though you're a natural-born citizen and don't consider freedom of speech to be insulting, but now you're accused of a hate crime because of the open borders and flying in unidentified persons from around the world. And it is including crime-ridden nations, jihadist nations, countries that don't love America, in fact, are anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-Jew, anti-Christian, and so forth. And so this is a very serious problem, because above our federal government, there also appears to be other levels of wealthy people behind the veil who are controlling them. So it is very concerning to me. I don't know how we're going to pierce all that, but it's interesting to talk about. So wasn't it civil? Well, actually, what I wanted to ask you is maybe you should explain to the audience, what does the term states' rights actually mean?
Well, the term states' rights means that each individual sovereign nation state is sovereign, and it is supposed to be sovereign over the federal government, because the states created the federal government. The federal government did not create the states. But if we look at what goes on a daily basis, it doesn't happen that way. But when we were, for example, Rose, you live in California, I live in Mississippi. I'm a citizen of the sovereign nation state of Mississippi. Most people today find that statement odd because, well, I'm an American, or they say I'm a U.S. citizen, which I'm definitely opposed to because anything U.S. actually resides in Washington, D.C. Anything outside the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. is actually not U.S. It's America. It's the individual states. And, of course, the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. sits on land in the state of Maryland. Most people don't think about it that way. They just think, well, it's Washington, D.C. But and for years we've heard about them wanting D.C. statehood, and for years I've been saying, you got statehood already. Your land sits on Maryland land. You're actually part of Maryland. So if you really want to have statehood, dissolve Washington, D.C., give the land back to Maryland, and then you'll be part of Maryland. And people, again, when I say that, they look at me weird and then start laughing when they realize I'm correct. But it's a funny thing. Again, every state, and you have to think about it this way, what is states' rights and what is state sovereignty? Every state in America has their own governor, their own legislature, and their own Supreme Court. And each state also has a flag. Only nations have flags. California has their own flag. Wisconsin has their own flag. Texas has their own flag. Mississippi has their own flag, and so on. And they all have their own governor, their legislature, and their judiciary. They have the three separate things, just like Washington, D.C. does. And most people don't look at it in those terms, and therefore, basically, the wool is being pulled over their eyes.
Exactly. And also, the Constitution says that the federal government only has limited powers, but they have put their big foot on everybody's necks, and they are using mandate to force us, along with coercion and threats and intimidation and punishment, if we don't obey them, and not obey the Constitution, but obey them as elected officials, which I see as abuse of power and abuse of our tax dollars and abuse of us. And I see a lot of, not going to get off on this, but a lot of depopulation programs, which isn't in the Constitution as well, because pro-life is in the Constitution and the pursuit of happiness. And we're not very happy today. So I think they're failing on all levels. So what do you mean? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, the federal government has 32 enumerated powers. 2 of them are to provide for a national defense and secure our borders. I consider those the top 2 of the 32, and they're not doing a very good job on those top 2. But they have 32 enumerated powers, no more, no less, and anything that's not listed in those 32 is reserved for the states. And of those 32 enumerated powers, the federal income tax is not one of them. The federal income tax has been illegal and unconstitutional since it was enacted by an illegal act of Congress on December 23rd of 1913. The IRS is also illegal. And people just kind of look the other way. Congress looks the other way. Those are actually the facts. And that's what we got replaced with in 1871.
So would you say that the IRS is not a branch of the federal government? Is that a correct statement or not?
Well, basically the IRS works for the Federal Reserve Bank. And the Federal Reserve Bank is a foreign bank controlled by the Rothschilds, again, through England. And it came about by an act of Congress on December 23rd, 1913. The Federal Reserve Bank, the federal income tax, and the IRS were all created on the same day. And it was created illegally, but it was still created.
I think a lot of people are confused, including myself, Why do we have a foreign bank controlling the United States taxes, gold and silver?
Well, we have yes, it is a good question, and most people are not even aware that it happened. But we have not had the U.S. dollar since 1913. We have had Federal Reserve notes. And in 1933, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt took office after being elected in November of 32, in March of 33, he penned an executive order which made it illegal to own gold for the average American. And we basically we didn't totally go off the gold standard, but they devalued gold then. And then in 1971, President Richard Nixon and the Democrat-controlled Congress took us off the gold standard, and we've been off the gold standard since 1971. We are supposed to be under the Monetary Act of 1792, where our currency is based on gold and silver coin. So they violated that as well. But the Federal Reserve Bank has controlled everything. They control the flow of money. They control the amount of money that's in circulation, and therefore they control everything. But the Federal Reserve, as former Congressman Ron Paul said, the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express, and it has nothing in reserve. And he was very correct. And but the Federal Reserve, they just they came up with a cute name, the Federal Reserve Bank, but it is not part and never has been part of the federal government. The Treasury is supposed to control the printing of money, and that money is supposed to be backed by gold and silver coin. I remember early in my lifetime that you could go into a bank with a dollar, which was a Federal Reserve note, and you could exchange it for a silver dollar. I remember doing that, but in 1964, that was the last year. That changed. In 65, we no longer did silver coin, and it wasn't a one-on-one basis. And then in 1971, when Nixon and the Democrat Congress took us off the gold standard, oh my word, that's why the price of gas at the pump went up. That's why the price of housing went up. Anything that was a commodity, the price went up because the value of the dollar went down. And the dollar since 1913 with the Federal Reserve has gone down tremendously. It has the buying power of about a penny now compared to what it did back in 1913. So they've gradually stolen all the money from the American people. Again, this all started in 1871. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913 along with the income tax and the IRS, all illegal, all unconstitutional. But most people today don't know that any of those things happened. They don't know that we went off the gold standard in 1971. They don't know that they stopped minting silver coin in 1964. That was the last year. And people just kind of float through life and don't really know what's going on.
One of the issues that bothers me is I cannot understand a president of the United States only has 5 duties, and Congress is to make laws and to make sure that laws are just, equitable, fair, have common sense, and so forth. They are supposed to be included in the law and are in accordance with the U.S. Constitution and in accordance with the will of most Americans. They no longer do that, and they haven't done it for a long time. In fact, they don't even make laws anymore because they have refused and failed to even read the 2,700 pages of Obamacare, which was a real red flag to me because I wrote Obamacare is unconstitutional and illegal. And sent it to every congressman, senator, U.S. justice, and told them they're violating the law. And they probably round-filed it. But it hit the news because Fox News was basically reading it as issues from my blog that I posted. And so the issue was for me was that it appeared to me that not only did Congress and the President of the United States fail to read the 2,700 pages, it would have been impossible for a President of the United States to write 2,700 pages of laws, mandates, regulations, fines, penalties, taxes between January and April when they passed it of 2009. And so, and it included worldwide mandated vaccinations paid by the taxpayers. It included worldwide abortions paid by the taxpayers. So this is how people, I'm saying this because to me it was a hijacking and bordered on extortion, because we were for the first time in America forced to use our earnings after paying taxes to buy a consumer product or service, and against our will. And if we didn't follow, then we were threatened and coerced to be fined, or at one point they even wanted to jail us if we didn't sign up and pay up. But they did exempt themselves, and they exempted the Muslim and the Sioux Union and so forth. And so the big donors. And so those people were all exempted, and Congress got Cadillac insurance paid by the taxpayers. And so my big thing was like, how was any of this constitutional when they never read the 2,700 pages and said they had to pass it to find out what was in it? They should have all been fired and booted out of Congress as far as I was concerned. But that wasn't going to happen, and it didn't happen, because it appears to me that Congress in the past and current are more concerned about remaining in office, being taxpayer funded for life, pensions and benefits and vacations and health care, Cadillac health care, than they are concerned about securing the borders, for example, which is a constitutional state and federal law, and which most Americans are demanding it be done. So, which endangers our safety and welfare. So I'm very concerned about how they are just bypassing the Constitution and congressional duties and just going rogue as they are at the expense of the American people. What do you think?
I agree with you. They are going rogue. They've been going rogue since 1871. There is, again, we go back to the 32 enumerated powers. One of them is not health care. The Congress is, health care is unconstitutional. Health care is a private thing between an individual and their doctor. Government is not supposed to get involved. I remember growing up, it was very inexpensive to go see the doctor. I remember going with my grandparents when I was young, and a doctor visit was $5. Try getting a doctor visit for $5 today, and that was in the 60s. That was after silver coin was removed, but we were still on a gold standard until 1971. So, again, going to the doctor, $5. My grandfather, took the $5 bill out of his wallet, paid for the visit, and we were done. Going to the hospital for surgery. Most surgeries were usually just a few $100s. A hospital stay, it might be $20, $30 for a hospital room per day, if that. Probably not even that much. But again, the average American could afford it, and they paid for it themselves. There was no reason. But as Rose, as you and I both know, whenever the government gets involved in something, it's not going to just double. It's going to triple, quadruple, and so on.
Well, what's amazing to me, though, Bill, is that they can vote themselves an increase in pay, and they do every single time at our expense. Well, they are doubling and tripling the taxes, and our gasoline is doubled, tripled, our housing. I mean, Americans are being forced out of their homes. I'm very concerned about this. Forced out of their homes because they cannot keep up with the cost of living because their wages don't keep up, and then they outsourced our intellectual property, our jobs, and our manufacturing companies over to communist China. And called it globalism, which to me was not globalism. It was far worse than that, sinister and evil, to do that and cause the loss of quality products that were made in the United States of America. We have no real quality control today. People are dying from lead poisoning and all kinds of stuff that they don't talk about. But I do a lot of research, and there's a lot of harmful products coming into our country that are causing people to become ill or even die. And so, like when they sent baby cribs here, and the babies were dying because of something that went wrong with the cribs, and the drywall they sent here had mold in it, and the rice had lead. I mean, seriously, why would they take products that were quality made in the United States of America by American stamp, made in America, so you knew it was high quality, and then outsource this to third world countries to make them wealthy and make us poor and eliminate the middle class, because that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing them eliminate the middle class and force Americans to spend their retirement funds and force them to be equally poor with all the third world immigrants who are impoverished in crime-ridden countries pouring and flooding into our nation that we have to support. I mean, God bless them, but we cannot continue to have tens of thousands of people pouring into our nation. Bill, I believe there's about 40 million illegals in our country right now and fake refugees who did not come here to assimilate. As many of them said, they're not here to assimilate. And so the entire system is broken. They ignore the Constitution. They don't follow the Constitution. They don't uphold it, preserve it. They don't follow their sworn oaths. They take an oath on any foreign book they want today. Which means they're pledging their allegiance to a foreign nation, and their laws, not our laws. So it's very, very concerning that these people who are elected in the office and paid with our tax dollars for till the day they die are basically selling out the Constitution of the United States, in my opinion.
Well, as I said from the beginning, the country was taken over back in 1871. It's not something that just happened last week. It's not something that happened when Obama became president. It's not something that happened when Bill Clinton became president. This has been going on, Rose, since long before you and I were ever born. It's all planned. Nothing in politics happens by mistake. It's all planned. They planned it this way. They planned on moving manufacturing jobs out of the country. They did it so that America would become weaker, so that America couldn't defend itself. Just like we've been sending billions of dollars in money and guns and ammunition and other things to the Ukraine and depleting our military. That's called treason. I can't say it any other way. We're supposed to, and our politicians at both the state and federal level, it's supposed to be America first. And just like when we exited Afghanistan, we left billions of dollars of equipment in Afghanistan that should have been brought back here. But we left it there, and the Taliban has it. And
well, they also left the military equipment and vehicles and ammunition in Iraq, too, when ISIS was in control over there and attacking people over there who were starving to death and needing food and supplies and having to try to hide in the, I don't know, I guess they have some kind of caves and things, mountainous areas or something. And those poor people, that they were threatening over there, and they needed that food, and the food got dropped on ISIS instead of the victims. And so these things are very serious. I mean, who are we helping?
They are very, yes, they are very serious.
Who are we helping?
I know. Well, they are. All those things are very serious, but they're all part of their plan. What is their goal? We know it. You and I both know about Agenda 2030, to decrease the world population by 95%. They want to. The powers that be want to kill us all off.
50%. They're not going to kill all of us. It's 50%.
Oh no, I know. That's their goal. That was actually their goal by 2030, was to kill off 95%. No, they're not going to make that goal. Thank goodness. But that was their agenda. 15 years ago, that was their agenda by 2030.
They moved it up to 2050.
Right.
I mean, I'm laughing because it's not funny. It's not funny. But it's so absurd. I can't believe that the American people and the world can't see what is happening here.
What I don't understand is why these people aren't arrested and put behind bars. And most of them tried for treason and summarily executed. It's terrible, the things that go on. I don't understand how these people aren't arrested, but then again, I do understand why they're not arrested. They work for the powers that be, that control the world.
Yeah, well, God controls the world, and they're going to be in for a surprise one day. So anyway,
yes, I agree totally.
Yeah, so they that's what's so funny to me. It's like, hello. So what actually replaced? What do you think replaced, let's say, the Constitution of the United States, because they are ignoring it and they are bypassing it, and I mean, it's diversion after diversion after diversion. Look over here, look over there. This is happening here. This is happening there. So people are being kept in a complete fear-mongering mode of confusion and being convoluted with all of these agendas that cause fear in their minds and stress. And I think, it's so sad because people should be enjoying their lives and kids should be kids. Instead, they have children today concerned about their gender. Hello. I'm sure, there's a rare less than 1% who have a problem when they're born and they have to deal with it. But come on, we know how we go to the restroom. And so it's, I just read today, Bill, how is this even constitutional where these doctors are now transferring a male private part to a female private part and vice versa, and that they are a multi-billion-dollar company, creating a multi-billion-dollar business now using children for these operations. I mean, how did we get to this point? I mean, I think I'm not the only one concerned. I'm sure that there's millions and millions of Americans just totally confused.
Well,
how we got to this point.
It's called sexual mutilation is what it is. If you change a little boy or a little girl the other way, all you're doing is mutilating their genitals is what you're doing. They're still a boy. They're still a girl. They're either born one way or the other. That's how God designed it. And the sad thing is, Rose, these politicians, not just in America, but all over the world, they think that they are their own God. And one day, Jesus will remind them that, no, they are not. And they're in for a rude awakening when it happens.
It's so sad. I mean, it's just like we feel so helpless that, these children are going to go through this who don't know any better. They're just little kids. They don't, even as preteens or teenagers, they don't understand. All teenagers get confused, about, their bodies and sex and all that. But people grow up and they start to like themselves, and feel good about themselves. But they're not giving them that opportunity.
Rose, as a former high school band director, I basically had kids from grade 5 to grade 12. I am well aware of one day they were thinking they're a kid, the next day they think they're an adult and they know everything, and it would change almost on a daily basis. And to the point that some of them that I got to, the ones that I got to know the best, I would say, well, are you an adult today or a child, or are you in between? And the ones that I got to know well, they would just start laughing. And because I would call them on it, and we'd kind of work it through. And I said, it's okay. You're just going through, you're going through your growing time. And I said, eventually you will grow up to be a good adult. You will eventually have your head together. And right now you're kind of confused. I said, actually, that's normal. And they would look at me and say, really? And I'd go, yeah. And a lot of times they would come to me with questions because of that, because of the way I looked at it and because of my attitude about it. I didn't get upset with them. I said, what you're going through is normal. You're going through puberty. And, that's a normal part of growing up. We all went through that. But what's sad is that our politicians, who are supposed to be public servants, have taken advantage of the American people. But we have to understand, our politicians in Washington are beholden to the powers that be that run the world, and they are a corporation under the monarchy of England. And if most people realize that, it would be interesting on what would happen in Washington, D.C. But most people think it's not true. Even the ones that hear it say, well, that's not true. That couldn't happen. And I always tell them, then why did Congress do this? Why did Congress do that? It's not constitutional. But again, our politicians are supposed to be public servants. They are supposed to serve the people that elected them and follow the Constitution, and they're not doing either one. All of them are little kings that just do what they want.
You just reminded me of a book I wrote in just recently, is America Under Martial Law, and it is a theory on exactly that, of how we got to this point. And is it possible that there's a signed executive order that is not transparent to the public or known to the public that allows America to be under martial law? And what is the true meaning of the yellow fringe and the 3 golden braided knotted flag? And so it's a real enlightening, empowering, and mind-opening expansion of people who are concerned about these issues, about our Constitution, and are we still free, and are we still under the Constitution? So if we're not under the Constitution, has it been replaced? Has it ignored? And Congress isn't making the laws. The laws are coming from not just this White House, but have been coming from the White House for quite a while now.
Yes. Well, again, we have to understand that Washington, D.C. is a British corporation. President of the United States is the president of that British corporation. And I know that sounds very strange, but I believe it's the truth. Can I prove it totally? Well, there's debate both ways. But when you see what Congress does on a daily basis, it really makes you shake your head. And the the biggest thing is this. They've not secured the borders. They're allowing hundreds of thousands of illegals to come in this country. And I agree with you, Rose. It's at least 40 million that are here illegally in this country, probably 50 or 60 million.
And they're getting rights, Bill. They're getting rights. They're even turning beautiful hotels into shelters for them. And here Americans are losing their homes and going into tents. This is very disturbing.
Well, again, their reasoning is to destroy America, just like the Civil War was perpetrated to take away states' rights and to change America into a strong central government, which was never the founders' intent, because the founders wanted a very weak central government. If the founding fathers came back today, they would be totally shocked at what they see today. They would be very, very upset.
Well, my father died.
What we have today.
My father died in 2021, and he said, tough Italian guy who truly, loved this country. And one of the things he said to me before he passed away, he said, Rosie, my family calls me Rosie, my friends, he said, Rosie, he said, I am so sad for this country. And he said, I always was loyal and paid taxes and worked hard and loved this country. He goes, but I am really sad at what is happening to this country today. And I felt so bad because he was a veteran, and my uncles and my cousins and all kinds of family members and friends were veterans in different wars. And they risked their lives. Some were injured. One has PTSD. Another one had his leg injured, and friends and stuff. And I'm just like, what is wrong with these people? What is possibly wrong with these American citizens who were born on this soil that they would sell us out like this and not feel the same way like my dad and the rest of us feel about this beautiful republic? And we are a republic, right, Bill? What's the difference between people calling us a democracy or a democratic country versus a republic?
Well, a democracy is mob rule. A republic, which is what the founders wanted. They wanted a republic. They definitely voted against a democracy. And now, can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. They voted to have a constitutional republic. They wanted to have a representative government. That's what they wanted. And that was their intent from the beginning. You mentioned about your father. Was he a World War II vet? My father was a Korean War vet. How old was your father when he passed away in 2021?
He was 90.
I figured he had to be. Yeah. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the veterans came to the hospital. The veterans actually came to the hospital, and they brought the flag, and they saluted him, and did a whole ceremony before he passed.
That is wonderful. My father's older brother, my Uncle Bud, was in Patton's Third Army, and he got wounded in World War II at Anzio, and have another uncle that was in the Navy, both in the Atlantic, and also when we moved against Japan, his ship went over to the Pacific, so he was in both theaters in World War II. That was my Uncle Bob, and so I mean, I heard a lot of.
But when you think about all the relatives, when you think about your relatives and your friends and our fellow Americans who are fallen soldiers and those who are veterans and so forth, the veterans don't get the same treatment that these illegals are getting and these fake refugees who are here.
That's correct. That is correct. It's a shame. It should not be that way. But again, we have to understand what we have as far as Congress. They are illegal and unconstitutional on a daily basis. I always tell that to people. When I talk to people, I say they're doing unconstitutional stuff as we speak. If it's not under the 32 enumerated powers, they don't have the right to do it. For example, the EPA, they're unconstitutional. We have a Department of Environmental Quality here in Mississippi. Therefore, the EPA can't exist because what exists at the state level cannot exist at the federal level. We have a state income tax here. Well, because of that, the federal income tax is illegal because it's a violation, again, of the 10th Amendment. What exists at the state level cannot exist at the federal level. The Department of Education, same thing. So you can see how they violate the Constitution every day.
Every day. Right.
But most people just don't realize that. But again, that's why we do these programs, to try to get the word out and try to get, if we can get, with this show, Rose, if we can get 10 more people to realize what's going on, I think we're doing a good job.
Exactly. I mean, the show is to empower, enlighten, educate, and entertain people. Hopefully they get some entertainment out of it. And, you know, the issue is that it's very difficult today to get this message out because of the censorship by social media run by CEOs and their fact checkers. Because if they don't like your message, you are not allowed to exercise freedom of speech anymore, which really bugs me, obviously, because we are natural-born Americans, and we have paid taxes all our lives and worked hard all our lives to live, the lifestyle that we can afford to live in, which is all relevant. I mean, I don't wish anyone, they can earn as much money as they want, thank God, in America. But today you can't because the wages aren't keeping up with the cost of living. And so people are concerned. People are worried. And so I want to make sure that Americans understand as much as they can and the rest of the world what is actually going on in America and why we are being concerned, let's say, about our sovereignty and about millions of illegals crossing our borders and living off the U.S. taxpayers. And there is no other country in the world, Bill, where somebody can cross over their borders from these countries they're coming from. If American did that, we'd be shot or thrown into hellhole and tortured, right?
Well, exactly. If we go to Mexico, if we cross the border illegally going into Mexico and we are captured, we go to prison for 2 years. At the end, and it will be a prison that you wouldn't even want to visit, let alone have to be in. And then
it'll be a hellhole.
Exactly. But if you survive that 2 years, they will then take you to the border and say adios. And if you're foolish enough to go back illegally into Mexico and they catch you a second time, it's 10 years in that prison, and you probably won't survive.
And it's the same way in the Middle East. It's the same way in all communist nations, Marxist nations.
It's the same way,
socialist
in
nations.
Most nations. But,
and what do they
again,
do here, Bill? What do they do here, Bill? They give you Social Security. They give you Medicare. They give you Obamacare. They give you a place to live. They give you food. They give you a cell phone. What on earth is happening?
Free housing. I mean, who wouldn't want to come? Free food, free housing, free medical. Hey, it's all taken care of. But what could be done to turn it around is stop all that. Just tell them, go back to where you came from. The handout is over. And why isn't Congress doing that? Well, you go back to the same thing. Who controls Congress?
Yes.
To me, it's so obvious.
Bill Bays, we've run out of time. Is there a message you would like to give to the audience before we say goodbye?
Well, I'd just like to say to everyone listening to this program, I hope that if you haven't been paying attention, I hope that you now are paying attention to how corrupt and unconstitutional federal and state governments are, and also our court system. They're all illegal. They're all unconstitutional. And one day they will have to face God and make an accounting. Thank you again, Rose, for having me.
Thank you, Bill Bays, and God bless you, and keep up the good work, and we'll have you back again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. God bless you, too.
Thank you. And that's all we have time for today, folks. And remember, injustices can happen to you, and they can happen to me. And by the way, they have. So, it's part of life. And so you got to work your way back up and out of it. So anyway, remember, you are never alone when you listen to Colombo Chronicles live right here and the Justice Club. So God bless you. God bless America. God bless everyone around the world. And definitely pray for peace around the world. That is the goal.
Colombo Chronicles Live. Colombo is on their trail. Listen up at Colombo Chronicles Live.
Well, my friends, time flies. And now is the time to say goodbye. Thanks so much for being part of the Colombo Chronicles family. You are appreciated. Please do it now. Bookmark. Push that like, share, and follow button. Oh, and don't forget to comment below and stay in touch. Make your family part of the Colombo family. Until next Wednesday at noon, remember, God loves you, and so does the Rose.